She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Curled up on the cold sidewalk with nothing but a soggy cardboard sign, she watched as hundreds passed by, no one seeing her, no one stopping. Her stomach growled louder than the traffic. She whispered, "Please, just one person." Then, a shadow paused in front of her. She looked up, expecting another insult or ignored glance, but instead, a kind-eyed man knelt down and offered her a paper bag of hot food. He didn't just see her, he saved her. That simple act was about to change everything. It had been 48 hours since Layla had eaten a proper meal. The growling in her stomach was now constant, and the numbness in her toes had spread up her legs. She sat quietly against the brick wall of a convenience store, pulling her thin jacket tighter around her frail frame. The city buzzed around her, people in tailored coats rushing past, phones to their ears, eyes fixed ahead as if she didn't exist. She used to have a job. An apartment. Friends. But life had unraveled faster than she could patch it together. A layoff, then late rent, then eviction. Her final lifeline, her best friend, moved away, leaving her with nowhere to turn. Now, she was just the homeless girl outside 10th Street Mart. She whispered to herself, "Just one person. Please, just one." Her voice cracked, and a tear slipped down her cheek. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, her cardboard sign, once neatly lettered, was now smudged from dampness and despair. She lowered her head and listened to her stomach groan. The cold pavement beneath her was unforgiving. People came and went. A woman with a designer purse paused only to drop a few coins without making eye contact. A group of teenagers laughed loudly as they passed, one even mockingly saying, "Get a job." Layla closed her eyes, not out of rest but to block out the sting of humiliation. Every second felt longer. She wasn't just hungry, she was losing her humanity. Then, for the first time in hours, someone stopped. He looked different, older, warm brown eyes, graying hair under a knit beanie. He crouched to her level. "You look like you could use a meal," he said softly. Layla blinked, unsure if she was imagining him. He extended a hand, not with cash, but with a warm paper bag that smelled like garlic bread and soup. The scent overwhelmed her. "Come eat with me. There's a little diner right down the street." She hesitated. No one ever invited her anywhere. But his eyes weren't judging. Just kind. Shivering, she stood. Maybe, just maybe, this was her moment. The small diner was only 2 blocks away, but for Layla, it felt like crossing into another world. The cold wind still bit at her skin, but the warmth of the stranger's gesture had begun to thaw something deeper, her fear. They walked in silence. He didn't press her with questions or look at her like she was dirty or dangerous. He simply held the door open as they entered a glowing, retro-style diner with checkered floors, red booths, and the soft sound of jazz humming from an old jukebox. The waitress gave them a curious glance, but the man gave a small nod. She seemed to know him, her expression softened, and she led them to a booth near the window. "I'm Mark," he said as they Saturday order anything you want. "It's on me." Layla stared at the menu, overwhelmed. Her hands trembled. She hadn't seen this much food in front of her in weeks. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Thank you." She chose the tomato soup with grilled cheese. When it arrived, the steam made her eyes water. Not from the heat, but from everything this moment represented. As she dipped her sandwich into the soup, Mark finally asked gently, "How long have you been on the streets?" Layla looked down. 3 months. I lost my job. Then my apartment. I tried to stay with friends, but they moved on. I gave up trying. Mark didn't interrupt. He just listened. No pity, no judgment. Just presence. "You shouldn't be out there alone," he said quietly. "Especially not someone like you." "Someone like me?" she asked cautiously. He smiled. "Someone with fight still in their eyes." They talked for over an hour. Layla told him about her dreams, how she once studied social work, how she loved writing poetry, how she used to believe in making a difference. Mark nodded thoughtfully. Then he placed a business card on the table. I run a non-profit that helps women get back on their feet. We offer shelter, mentorship, and jobs. If you want out, you've got a way. Layla stared at the card as if it were a golden ticket. For the first time in months, she felt something unfamiliar, hope. The next morning, Layla stood outside a tall iron gate with the same business card still clutched in her hand. The building ahead was modest but well kept, painted a calming shade of blue, with flower beds lining the path. A sign read, Hope Haven, a second start for women. She hesitated. Her old instincts screamed at her to run, to expect disappointment. But then she thought of Mark, the warmth in his eyes, the way he didn't flinch when she told the truth. That night at the diner had broken the wall she'd built around her spirit. The woman at the front desk greeted her with a smile that didn't feel forced. You must be Layla. Mark called ahead. We've been expecting you. Those words hit her harder than she expected. Someone had planned for her arrival. Someone wanted her here. Inside, the shelter smelled like lavender and clean sheets. A far cry from the dumpsters she had curled beside. There were bookshelves, a common room with soft couches, and laughter echoing down the hallways. Women, young, old, shy, loud, moved through the space with a quiet sense of belonging. A volunteer named Grace showed her to a private room. It wasn't much, just a bed, a desk, and a dresser, but to Layla, it was a palace. She sat on the bed and ran her hands across the neatly folded blanket like it was velvet. Tears fell again, but this time not from hunger or shame. They came from relief. Later, she met with a counselor named Tanya who helped her sign up for their job training program. They asked about her goals, not just what she needed to survive, but what she wanted to build. That night, after a warm dinner and a hot shower, Layla lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. She wasn't planning how to stay warm or where to hide. For the first time in forever, she was dreaming again. And her first dream was simple, I will never go back. 3 months later, Layla stood behind the podium, her palms slightly sweating, her heart pounding, not from fear, but from disbelief. The banquet hall was filled with people, donors, volunteers, former shelter residents, and a few women still finding their way. The Hope Haven annual fundraiser banner stretched across the stage behind her, and below it, a photo slideshow played quietly, women finding homes, getting jobs, starting new lives. Layla took a deep breath and looked down at her notes, but she barely needed them. 3 months ago, she began, I was sleeping on a sidewalk with no idea how I'd survive another day. Silence settled over the room. I thought I was invisible. That no one would ever care what happened to me. But someone did. A man named Mark offered me food, not just to fill my stomach, but to remind me that I mattered. She paused, her voice trembling. That night, he handed me a card that led me here. To Hope Haven. And in these walls, I found more than a bed. I found a voice. I found my dignity. And now, I've found my future. Applause erupted. Layla smiled through tears. She didn't cry out of sadness this time, but out of pride. After completing her job readiness program, she had been hired as an assistant outreach coordinator. Her poetry, which she once scribbled on napkins in alleyways, had just been published in the shelter's monthly newsletter. Mark sat at a table near the front, watching her with a quiet smile, eyes glistening. After the event, a young woman approached her. She looked thin, uncertain, just like Layla once had. Do you think someone like me can start over too? The girl asked. Layla didn't hesitate. I don't think. I know. And just like that, the cycle of hope continued, because sometimes, all it takes is one stranger, one moment, one second chance.